meeting to order. This is the Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting of September 4th, 2018. It's about 5 o'clock, and thank you all for coming. The first order of business we have today is approval of minutes from our June 5th, 2018 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Next up, we have a presentation regarding the Foothills Collaborative Action Networks by Mr. Mike Cannon. Mr. Cannon?
First of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be here tonight. We appreciate the invitation. I'm the parent of two special needs sons. One is 46 years old and lives in one of our group homes in Anderson County. And our youngest is 29 years old, and he still lives with us at home. And then we have a middle son who is a CPA living out in Houston. But I've served on the Anderson County Disabilities and Special Needs Board for 20-something years. And I had lunch with a friend about 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, and he mentioned a project called Greenville Can. And it kind of piqued my interest when he told me all about what they were doing with Greenville Can. And there are actually two other of these collaborative action networks in the entire state. One is in Charleston and one in Greenville, as I mentioned. And I'm happy to say that here we are 2 years later, and we now have Foothills Can. And it's for the three counties of Anderson, Oconee, and Pickens County. And I'm happy to say that we've got on a steering committee. Mr. Kane serves on our steering committee, as does Mayor Dan Alexander from Seneca, and Melissa Rozier, who works with the school systems in Oconee County, and Sheila Ford, who is over Voc Rehab. I think those are the four from Oconee County that served on our steering committee. And the steering committee started working together probably a year or so ago, trying to put together what we want our Foothills Can to be like. And if I didn't mention it before, CAN stands for Collaborative Action Network. And our mission statement, as you see in front of you there, is pretty straightforward. It's very simple. We want to ensure that our special needs, and we like to refer to these folks as our friends. We like to ensure that our friends have the ability to enjoy life and just make these three counties a better place to live, work, and play for all of our friends with any kinds of disabilities that they might have. So that's pretty much straightforward on our mission statement. Then we sat down and we said, okay, we want to identify, and it was really interesting when we met down at Tri-County Tech several months ago. I went around the table and asked the folks from Oconee County, what are the three things for your special needs population that you think you would like to see happen? Without a shadow of a doubt, the very first thing mentioned was jobs. The next thing was transportation. And the next thing, awareness. In other words, if we get them a job, how do we get them from point A to point B? And I'm very fortunate to have worked with the folks at Walgreens down in Anderson from day one. Probably 14 years ago, I went up to Chicago when they were considering building the distribution center in Anderson, and met with the folks up there. And any of you who would like to come and tour the Walgreens distribution center, I would like to extend that open invitation to you to come. I will be more than happy to arrange that. Don't know if you've had that opportunity yet, but it's and what they've done, though, is Randy Lewis is the gentleman who started the idea of the Walgreens distribution center. I'm going to discuss that a little bit to go back to the Foothills Can, because the two do link. Randy came up with the idea. He has a special needs son, Austin, who must be 30 by now. And when they started talking about this distribution center, Randy said, I know that my son can work. And he said, we're going to prove it. So Randy was sitting out on this limb, and here's the tree here, and here's the limb, and here he is over here sawing on that limb, not knowing what in the world is going to happen once this starts. But when it got started, it absolutely was one of the best things that's happened to any company that I've heard of. 40% of their workforce when they opened was special needs. It turned out to be absolutely the most productive distribution center in their entire chain. It was so productive that they have duplicated this. They even sent a group down here from Connecticut and duplicated this exact distribution center in Connecticut. So where did the two link? Where does our collaborative action network and Walgreens interlink? A lot of ways. Jobs was the first thing that we mentioned on our list. And I'm fortunate to be involved with a hotel down in Florida. I was down there 2 weeks ago. We interviewed this special needs young man. We offered him a job on the spot. He's going to come, today was his first day on the job. After the job was accepted, the very first thing that was mentioned was, how do we get him here? And here's a special needs young man who was going to have to take 3 different bus routes to get to work each day. So let's come back to Oconee County. If a person here gets a job, how do we get them to that job? And I want to use the buses from a lot of churches in the area, because look around Oconee County and any county that you go through, and the bigger churches have buses. 5 days out of the week, those buses are sitting there idle. And I'm sure Mike Cannon is not the only person in these 3 counties that would volunteer to drive one of those buses and get our friends to those jobs. So that's where we think that we have the opportunity to work with you folks and trying to get the word out about our Foothills Can and what we want to do and what we want to accomplish. Now, back to how do we link to Walgreens. On September the 17th, 2 weeks from yesterday, we're very fortunate. I mentioned Randy Lewis earlier. Got in touch with Randy. He's now retired from Walgreens. Told him what we have going with Foothills Can, and that we have a budget of 0. You're looking at our budget here, and you're looking at your PowerPoint presentation in front of you there. So that's what we have, and we're working on that limited budget, but I'm happy to say that everyone that we've approached has said yes to us so far. When I got in touch with Randy Lewis and told him that we would like for him to come down and be our keynote speaker at our launch lunch, is what we're calling this, on the 17th. It's going to be at Tri-County Tech and their Anderson campus at 12:30. Would love to have you guys come and participate in that and see what we do and hear Randy talk about what's going on. Looking through the packet, I went to the Census Bureau and checked, and the 3 counties of Oconee, Anderson, and Pickens County has about 400,000 people in those 3 counties. It's also estimated that 47,000 individuals have some kind of intellectual disabilities. Let's say that only 10% of those are employable. And I'm just throwing these numbers out just for discussion. That's 4,700 individuals that are out there that we should be servicing. I've contacted folks at Voc Rehab in all 3 counties and with the Disabilities and Special Needs Boards in all 3 counties. Collectively, the 3 counties serve about 3,600 folks. So we've got 1,100 folks out there that are employable, that would like to work. Now, here's another kicker. Look at your unemployment rate in these 3 counties. It's less than 4%. Anybody that wants a job has a job. We can help you. We, being the special needs population, can do the same thing for any company, I don't care what company it is, in each of these 3 counties. And we have training for them. We had shadows that will follow them around. So that's the thing that we want to do: jobs, transportation, and awareness. So I think that's pretty much in a nutshell. I know that brevity is important to this, and I hope that I haven't gone over my allotted time. But any questions that any of you would have, what we're trying to accomplish. And remember, again, Walgreens is a perfect example. It can work. So help us get these friends jobs, and we'll find them transportation.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions from the committee?
Well, thank you for your commitment, and I've seen it firsthand. They're absolutely fantastic, not only friends but workers as well, and they're a great part of this community. And I think Oconee County is very receptive to everything that they do, and that's from the parades and from everything around there.
Right.
They're a great part of our community, and appreciate all that Foothills Can is doing to continue to put an emphasis on that. And collaborative efforts is another big thing. Together it's going to be a lot stronger.
It will be, yes. Well, thank you for your comments.
Mike, I have a special needs granddaughter, and I'm sure that my daughter is going to be very interested in this. My special needs granddaughter draws more attention. No more people know her when we go out to breakfast than they know me, and I usually know about everybody. They come up and speak to her, and they don't know who I am. And again, I'm glad to see that we have this going on in the county.
Thank you. And what you say is absolutely right. Nobody knows my wife Brenda and I. We go out to lunch somewhere, they know Brooks or Ross, And a good example of this is about 3 or 4 months ago, we went out to dinner one night at a restaurant in Anderson, and these 4 elderly ladies were sitting at a table near us. They were having a blast. So I called a waitress over, and I says, I want their check. And don't let them know who's picking up the check for them. It hadn't been 3 minutes until one of those ladies got up out of her chair, and she had to struggle to get out of the chair. She had to be close to 90 years old. And she came by us with her cane in her hand, and she looked and said, "You're Brooks's parents." So they didn't recognize us except through Brooks. And we had no clue that she knew our son. And we got the same thing going on with us. Well, thank you again for your time. And any questions that any of you have, even after this is over, you've got my cards. And please give me a call, and I'll be happy to work with you and answer any way I can.
Mike, thank you very much. And the date again for the date and time and location?
Is September the 17th at the Tri-County Tech Anderson campus. It's at 12:30. And what I would request is that if you would like an invite, you have my business cards there. Please send me an email, and I will send you an invite, because we're wanting to keep track of how many folks we're going to have there. It's limited, I think, to about 150 people, and we hope to just totally fill the room. And to show you what a leech I am again, that's free. We don't have any budget, so I got in touch with a dear friend of mine who owns his own catering business, Boulevard Catering, and I said, "Hey, buddy, we don't have any money, but we need some food." He said, I told him what it's all about, so he's donating all the food for free. So I'm a beggar of the best, and I don't mind doing it for our friends.
Well, thank you for supporting that, and hopefully, as this initiative grows, the Foothills Can, Oconee County will be integrally involved. I don't know if that's the right way to say that.
I know what you're saying. So
But we need to be involved. In my opinion, we need, these recessions or growth, bull markets don't die of old age, and we could see another 5 years of expansion and growth and in the economy, and the unemployment rate will continue to drop, and so we need to look everywhere we can to find a workforce and make it easier for folks with disabilities to re-enter or to enter the workforce. So
Right.
thank you for what you're doing.
And just let the companies know that you're working with that it does work. And we'll be happy to take them down to Anderson and let them see how it works, and at the Walgreens Distribution Center. And again, invite those companies to come on the 17th as well. Any company that's in this county would like to have them represented there.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you so much.
All right, now we have a couple of discussion items, the first of which is the creation of protections for agricultural lands by Mr. Adam Chapman.
If it'd be okay with the council, one of our ag board members would like to speak for it.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Alexander, and I would just like to speak with you for a few moments about the protection of ag lands. As we all know, and I don't think anyone would dispute, that agriculture has been alive and well in Oconee County for the last 150 years, and we're celebrating our cinquennial. Right now, I think we have put together some ag facts, and we have about 884 of those farms in the county. And those include small operations to large commercial operations. We have over 20 century farms, which means they've been here that 100 years to get that designation. And all we're asking is for you to consider a protection, a setback boundary for when a farm is conducting their annual spraying, say, for example, pesticides on a fence line or something, that farm has protection to do what they need to protect their land, to grow, and to do what they've always done. We're not asking for anything, outrageous. We're just asking for minimal setbacks, and we're asking for it. Adam and I talked about agriculture. If you're zoned agriculture, and if you're zoned traditional rural. One issue that has been brought to my attention, that if you just look at that and don't look at the fact of the zone-free districts, that you may be overlooking some of the smaller farms. So I don't know how that could be addressed, but understand that there's a number of small farms that are in your zone-free area that cannot be zoned. Some can be now that you've lowered the limit to the 50 acres, but there are still going to be those smaller farms that cannot be in a area that's designated. So if you could look at that, it would be great. So that's what we're asking
What's the
for.
proposal? Is it 25 feet or what do y'all?
25 feet, I think, would be a good number. I think we haven't had a chance to really, we've discussed it some, but I think that's what we're kind of looking at. Adam has given us several examples of that. I think 25 feet is one of the things. You have a lake setback that's 50 feet, or it's at 25 feet, and so we're kind of looking for the same protection.
Adam, what, is that 25 feet on lake? What's the lake, or is it 50?
So for the vegetative buffer is 25 feet.
Okay.
And if you look at it as an industrial piece or as a lake, rather than a lake, it is the same kind of setback. So I believe the gist of it is, if there's a possibility that if we could have some form of buffer on the adjacent lands to lands that have been zoned ag or traditional rural.
But, go ahead, Julian, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So it doesn't necessarily give them the right to spray the 25 feet over their boundary line.
No.
It's the overspray on their property line.
Yes, I think
what you're-
most farmers they're not going to overspray because they don't have that kind of money to waste. So what they're asking for is just for the protection that when they do, and pesticides is just an example, but if they do spray their fence line, that there's not an issue with their neighbor.
Okay.
I think they've been good stewards for years. We're just trying to maintain that protection.
And if I may, so several of the large manufacturers of chemicals such as pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers require a minimum setback for spraying. So some of like Monsanto products, things of that nature, you can't spray within 100 feet of a house. So which means with our current setbacks, if you build your house 10 feet next to a property line, that farmer then loses 90 feet of arable land because of where you put your house adjacent to it. And it's not meant to be a punishment to anyone building next to farmland or a punishment to farmers, but if we're going to keep feeding the country, we're a breadbasket area, so that's the idea, is to help protect the inputs and things of that nature on a perennial basis.
But this wouldn't change what you just stated, having a house setback if that's the spray rule. Are you talking about proposing that a person can't build within that property line?
Similar to the Lake Overlay District, the setback, the 25-foot vegetative setback we have on Lake Kiwi. So you can't build within 25 feet of the 800. This would be a similar setback if possible. So for instance, we looked at San Bernardino County, California. They have a 100 to 300 foot setback from their agricultural properties. That's not what we're looking for, but there is other precedent for providing for uses of that nature.
And it'd just be a building setback?
Yes, sir.
I guess that's just like a housing or fencing or,
Dwelling units, sir.
Dwelling-
Is
dwellings
the way
only.
I'm looking. Now, this hasn't been hashed out
Okay.
in detail at all, but I guess in the Ag Board's eye, they see that if you have your farm and Mr. Davis owns a piece of land next to it and subdivides it into, say, 20 units, that those 20 units aren't gonna all of a sudden be 5 foot off of your Century farm. So those, instead of being a 5 foot setback, it'd be a 25 foot setback. Or just using 25 as a discussion number, not as anything that's been hashed out.
If you take where I live, for example, I know obviously it'd be grandfathered in, but let's say there was no houses on the 3 pieces of land that border my property. That would render all 3 of those unbuildable based on that rule because of the setback from the road. So that'd have to be, and the setback from my property line for whatever their buildable would be. That'd be the only thing that I would question on that is a lot of farms, especially if you get out in the Friendship area, there's a lot of, farm, property lines that border land where the farm owner has sold out the front portion of his property. Now, if there's existing houses, this doesn't matter.
Right.
Because you couldn't change that.
That's
But for
correct, sir.
those property, that'd be, my only concern would be is that you're, whatever. I guess they would have, would that be on a plat? Would that be shown on a plat, like they couldn't build within 100 feet of that farmer's
Yeah,
land
similar-
if it was zoned?
Yes, sir. It'd be similar to what we have currently with the Lake Overlay District, because it'd just be, hey, you have a setback of. So, for instance, going back to your initial point of having tiny lots and make them unbuildable, we have sliding scales right now for Control-Free District and Lake Residential District. It's certainly something that we could look into doing regarding that as well. Or if you're under a certain size, like I said, we don't have any hard details, but when we had a kind of a farmer rancher listening session not too long ago with the Ag Board, some of the other agricultural professionals brought up that this is becoming an issue, that you're losing tillable land because you're having houses move in next door and you can't, properly treat them with whatever input you want to.
And I think that's the other thing that, as a farmer, that we want them to know. We don't, if you end up doing that, then that's fine. And if you build within that, just understand you've built next to a farm, and there is that, we're going to be good stewards and we're going to try to get along. But if you want to be our neighbor, you need to work with us. And I think, if you give them a variance to build within that, they need to understand that's what was there and that's where we're at.
Right. So I guess it sounds to me like y'all are more a proponent of the 25 feet property line for the spray than you are really pushing for you can't build within a certain period. Okay. My worry is if we go that route, you're going to restrict somebody's land. And I get it because when we spray our pastures, my yard gets sprayed too. It's just part of it. When you're throwing chicken manure down, the dust and stuff travels well more than 25 feet, but it is just part of
And I think
farming.
that's all we're wanting them to know is you've chose to build beside a farm. This is what we're doing, and we just want some protection where they can't come back on the farm. So,
We could provide some sort of other studies and show you what other places have done in regards to these ag setbacks and kind of provide you with some, just kind of how it looks on paper. If that's something that'd be interesting to you, and we can provide it to you and come back at your next meeting. Sure.
I think also, you need to look at it the other way too, because if you have someone who comes in and builds a development next to a farm, a housing development, some of the activities that housing development has may interfere with what you're doing with on your farm as well. But when a farm exists, we're looking for you to have The setback is for your protection as well, is really for the farm's protection, not, and you realize that you're moving next to a farm. So you need to look at it the other way as well. If you have a golf course built by my farm and you're spraying your golf course, it could affect, if I have an organic farm, I might lose my organic certification because of your drift. So you have to look at it both ways.
Ms. Sewell, will you state your name for the record? Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, Debbie Sewell.
Thank you.
So not to leave it hang, OEA, Ms. Hartman created excellent, these are based upon the 2012 ag status. This is the numbers for our farm, for our farms in the county. Sir.
Thank you. So what's the control-free setback right now?
It varies, but anything over half acre is 25, 5, and 10. 25 from the front, 5 from the sides, 10 from the rear. Under that, less than that, it trims down to 5 foot and 10 foot on the sides and rear.
Okay. So you don't want any action on this today? You just wanted to tell us that the Ag Advisory Board is working on this particular issue?
And, the idea was that the Ag Board would send it to you, and then you all could, if you all chose to, send it to Planning Commission to actually have them hash it out. That seems to be the way it would be written, or we go back to Ag Board to come some more details if you like that, since this is kind of more of a meta idea, not a hashed out idea, so we can certainly come back to you with a more kind of outline plan.
So the committee would would by motion send this concept to the Planning Commission? Okay.
The motion would be that the committee refers it to the planning commission for further action to work up a draft ordinance, and then by, just the flow of things, it would come back to this committee before it went to full council.
Okay. And then I'm sure it would bounce between full council and the Planning Commission several times, as history's shown.
Perhaps.
Yeah,
Maybe
okay.
not.
You all have been 100% supportive of agriculture, the council has, so I have full faith in you. You all have done so much for ag in the last year, so,
Well, you need a farmer 3 times a day.
yes, sir.
You only need a lawyer like once in a lifetime. Some people get away with even that, less than that. So,
Thank you,
a
John.
lot more bored than we are.
I'm needed.
Do I hear a motion to refer this to the Planning Commission?
Second. All right, so moved. Sorry. I'm so used to, never mind, I'll be quiet.
Do I hear
Motion, he can second it.
are you,
Second, yeah.
Okay.
Third, fourth, whatever.
any discussion on this?
I guess,
I have one little thing there. Adam, I don't know how his head, he goes from different hats. I mean, he goes from 25 feet here and then 5 feet here, and then to, you can build right against the property line, so I know it has to be hard on him switching hats.
Yes, sir.
the one concern that I have is, when we're talking about size, I know farms come in all kinds of sizes in this county, but if certain people state that they are a farm and they're using that 25-foot buffer to spray, I'm worried on what could be sprayed on another person's property to what would constitute a necessary need for a farm. Certain people like to take advantage of certain of our rules around here, and while I think what should be used and what I have seen used on a farm and what could be used, mainly the word Roundup that people like to spray on other people's property for certain reasons. I just don't want that to, it's not something that you really use. I mean, you use that around your fences and stuff like that, obviously, but I just want to be careful in our wording in here, and that could be a concern that could be sent forth with that to make sure that it doesn't get abused.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The intent would be to allow the farmer to use as much property of their own as they can, technically, legally do within the confines of whatever input they're putting down, not to allow them to step over that onto anyone else's property.
I think if you had a use clause in there on in other words, you're trying to keep it within, this could go wild, you know what I'm saying? Because obviously, depending on, the amount of kudzu that we have in here, I've seen, and just, what that would be.
I've got an example of that. I had a gentleman up at Joe Cassie, and I run the property line in. He said, "Oh, Lord, I hope that's not the property line." He said, "You see those trees there?" He said, "I've been putting Roundup on them. They're blocking my view of the lake." And lo and behold, 5 years later, he sued for like $25,000 for two oak trees that he killed that fell off of the side of the hills where it opened up his view.
Got his view.
So he could take that 25 feet, and he may not have got sued. I was in the 25 feet away from the property line, but he thought that his property line took those trees in, which they didn't.
So he was on someone else's property.
Right.
Right, so the intent, we couldn't write anything that would allow Farmer A to go onto this person's property. The idea would be that this person doesn't put a house in this area. That way, when he sprays over here, he maximizes his ability to farm there.
Well, what would he say if I was spraying and it just drifted over 3 more feet to those big oaks?
Like, I think that goes to Mr. Davis's clause, kind of thoughts about a use clause or things of that nature, that they would have to be hashed out. I don't have any more details.
Just to me, I think it would be put in the ordinance as a, cautionary use. Obviously, you got those boom sprayers, and those things can spray out long ways. You can do whatever you want to, that's the only thing that I would worry about. I don't even worry about it on the large size. But if you're talking about, your neighborhood farms and stuff like that, that's where you're gonna run into some issues. It's just the one thing that I would bring up through the planning commission, cause I know what it would be like to me if you've got, we've got a few, issues with neighborhood farms that we try to address, that's been addressed in the community before.
And all I was going to ask was, with those farms, how are they taxed within our county? Are they classified as agricultural and farmland within those? And I think if they are, then they fall under, that's what we're talking about. If they're agricultural land, not lake lots, sorry, Mr. Hart, but if they're agricultural land, then that is kind of what we're talking about, is the ag side of it. And then also, we're not just talking about spraying. Someone may not like it because, I'll talk about my horse barn. When we clean out, our dump site is too close, and they don't like the smell, or they don't like this because it's right there against the fence, or whatever. I'm just using that as an example. We're talking about actually agricultural lands that are deemed agricultural through the tax assessors and those farms, and then not just spray, but a protection for the farms.
I don't know that we can use a tax designation as a means of land use planning. I think,
Well, you would want to, I was just saying that because you're asking how do we identify the farm? If is it a true farm? I think that's what Mr. Davis was asking.
Well, farming comes in all different sizes.
Right.
So, I can farm in my house, and I can farm, and that was what I wanted to make sure of for the planning commission, because we struggled to, where are we headed to? And the last thing I want them to do is to bring an ordinance that, there's gotta be a clear direction on what we want here, because are we talking about large farms, or are we talking about somebody that has, an acre of vegetables or something like that? Because if we get into that, I just wanna be cautious that we're making sure that we're identifying what we're trying to protect as what
I
you're
think we
saying.
want to protect, and we don't want to restrict I mean, I certainly don't want anybody telling me what to do on my property, and I know, there's a lot of people like that. They're a farm, they want to be able to do what they need to do, and that's not what we're asking for. We're not here to dictate any of that, so that's clear, so.
It would have to be, it would be zoned ag, that, I mean, it would be, I
Okay.
think.
Well, the traditional rule kind of threw me a curveball because that's not a lot of ag. I mean, the ag that y'all have out there now, I kind of understand it because of the land mass that you're zoned out there. But when you're getting into traditional rural areas, I mean, that agriculture, or is it not? That's one thing I just want to make sure that we're clear on. If there's going to be an ordinance that people are going by, what.
Certainly, we can just go with ag, that's perfectly, I mean, that falls right in line with an ag buffer is the ag district, yes, sir.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna start adding setbacks to all of traditional rural, that might I don't know, does that make somebody's lot unbuildable? I don't know.
I'd rather.
I think
stay.
we should look at the impact of this, and that, of course, would be the planning commission's job. I mean, I'm in favor of referring it to the planning commission, but it could have some serious unintended consequences if we don't specifically state whose property it affects.
Right, so before I went and made a whole bunch of research and things of that nature, I just wanted to make sure that it was something that was on the table. So maybe this goes to planning commission and turns out to be completely unpalatable or untenable, or the unintended consequences are far greater than we're looking at, of course. We just wanted to make sure that it was something worth taking the next step into before, going through that process.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion on that?
Is there any idea how many farms are under that traditional rural area?
I was.
A lot?
Under traditional rural, sorry. Like, how many pieces of property would be impacted surrounding traditional rural and ag? Those are certainly numbers that I'm making a map for, try to figure out.
Okay, that's all I have, Mr. K.
Okay. Anything else? So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of referring this to the planning commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the economic development update by our interim economic development director, Ms. Janet Hartman. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to come and present an update to the Committee for Planning and Economic Development. As Mr. Kane said, I'm Janet Hartman, the interim director. I do have an update for you this evening. I'll try to go through that quite quickly because I believe we have a 6 o'clock council meeting coming up. But I do have an update for you, but more importantly, I have a request of this committee at the end of my presentation. So if I appear to be speaking quickly, it's because I want to get to the ask at the end. But I think it's important that we share the information prior to that. So again, you have seen this slide before. It's been updated a little bit from a graphics standpoint, but just to keep in mind, under the umbrella of the Oconee Economic Alliance are all of these facets, working with the school district on the NOW program, the Made in Oconee program from a marketing standpoint, the work that we do at the Small Business Development Center in Walhalla, and then the Destination Oconee initiative, which encompasses our 3 municipalities, as well as the Think Oconee initiative, which has become way more than a buy local initiative, and we'll talk about that a little bit. To reinforce what our mission is, that mission has not changed with the exit of Mr. Blackwell. We will continue to focus on the core objectives that have been listed as diversifying our economy, trying to look for any and all opportunities that we have to continue to increase the tax base and put people to work in our community, continue to work to develop the competitive assets, whether that be our industrial parks, helping existing industry, or working on product development, working with our partnerships. I'm talk a little bit about that later, but economic development is all about relationships. And with, again, Richard leaving does not mean that we aren't working hard to maintain those relationships at all levels, whether that be with our existing industry, with new recruits, with our Department of Commerce, our utility partners, the power team, the list goes on. But we are continuing to work with those folks and make sure they understand who we are and who they need to contact to get things done in Oconee County. And then from a marketing and research side, telling our story to making sure people know who we are and how they can find us. So the economic development efforts that we have seen over the course of the last 6 years, you've seen the new job number being just shy of 1,600, capital investment half a billion dollars, which equates to 38 projects. Again, it goes back to the relationship development, because in that number is not all new business coming into Oconee County. We work hard to work with our existing industry on retention efforts. We have a very strong, next slide please, a very strong retention effort that goes on in our office with existing industry, making sure plant managers and HR directors know who we are, and if they need something, they can call us, whether it be they need to know something on a wage survey, or if they need to know something relative to where can I have a meeting and who has a meeting facility. Our number is on speed dial for a lot of these folks, and we help them with the things that they need. We do a lot of work with workforce development. That's a huge initiative right now. As you heard Mr. Cannon speak earlier, our unemployment rate is so low, we need to look at other opportunities to put people into the workforce. So workforce development efforts with talking with the kids at our AOP showcase, that we really have started that initiative and we continue to work that. Emily, actually, I didn't recognize my team. Emily and Daja are here tonight as well. But Emily works very hard with that workforce development piece. She sits on the WorkLink board. We work with the school district and Tri-County Tech as well. And then on recruitment, this is the piece that obviously we need to continue to build those relationships and make sure now we are out making sure we are the face in the community, whether it be the Department of Commerce, the Upstate Alliance, any of those partners that might be bringing a project to our area. It's much easier for a site consultant to call Janet Hartman and say, hey, I'd like to have this company come visit, when they know who we are and they know who they're working with. So we've worked hard to make sure they know who we are and how to get a hold of us. So we've been very involved in a lot of those meetings. When an RFI, which is a request for information, comes to our office, we do not let one come in that we do not answer. And that is very important, because you don't see 38 completed projects without having maybe 150 requests for information come in to be able to get those things done. Right now, we have 25 projects in the pipeline. They're at varying degrees, but it is work to stay on top of where they're at, who's our competition, what do we need to do to make Oconee County be the destination of choice. So those things are coming together. We've had a number of project visits in the last couple weeks. We have one coming up that's come back for a second time because they were impressed with what they saw the first time. And then site development. It's important to have product when you have a project that's looking for product. So next slide, we go into one of the projects we're working on right now is Seneca Rail. That project, we have the road improvement. That's the entrance road that's coming in. You can go ahead and slide, Katie. So Seneca Rail, this is the site we're talking about. Next slide shows where that entrance road is going. So that bid packet went out. We will look to have bid opening middle of September, and it'll come to council for approval on October 2nd. So we could begin work on that entrance road. And thanks to our friends at Seneca City, they've been very great to work with us in making sure that we could get through this. And Norfolk Southern's been one of our partners that we've had to wait a little bit on, but we got their approval, so that's why we're moving forward. So that bid is out right now, and like I said, we'll come to council October 2nd for approval and contract to be let the following day if possible. Then quickly, just two additional, when we talk about product, this isn't anything we've done aside from, I think, in economic development, we've made this county welcoming to additional development, whether that be commercial or retail. We've set kind of an example, and we've created an environment that's easy for these folks to come in. And what a plus for us to be getting additional lodging, because we hear all the time there's not enough lodging in Oconee County and people are staying in Anderson. Anderson or Pickens. We'd like to get them over in Oconee County. So with the Fairfield coming into Seneca, next one shows the Casto development, which originally had the True by Hilton Hotel, but it now also has an Aloft coming in right across the road from the True. So there'll be much more lodging available come later this year. Moving into research, which is another area I talked about, and we'll run through these quickly. Some of the information we provide, whether it's to our existing industry looking for information or information we provide to prospects looking at our community. Unemployment rates is always something we talk about and we track. Obviously, you know that rate compared to a year ago is lower, and it's kind of been holding steady. Like right now, I think the low was 2.5, 2.7, and now it's back up to 3.6. But again, very low, and that's why we need to continue to work hard on workforce development. The next slide just shows it from an annual perspective, where it was in 2009 and the downward slope since then. Next slide is Tri-County Technical College. A real plus for us, and something that you don't see probably in the Southeast at all, if not the country, is a workforce development campus where those kids are on site right next to manufacturing. That, as everyone knows, the campus opened, students started a week ago. We continue to work with them. This is a great selling point when we bring companies into the community for visits, to see that we have a partnership with Tri-County Tech and also with the school district. And then one last thing, as I talk about developing relationships, South Carolina Department of Commerce looks heavily on their leading counties for assistance and help. This past month in August, we hosted the Institute here in Oconee County. That was a competitive ask from the Department of Commerce, and we were able to host that here. It was industrial development, and we were able to showcase our relationships with existing industry, and it was very positively received by the Department of Commerce. So good things happening on that front. Moving into marketing and our social media, talking about economic development has changed such that it's not strictly just what industry's coming in and what product you have available for them. People are really looking at what kind of engagement opportunity they have, how are we accessible, and how is our information accessible. Our social media numbers continue to grow. That is our Oconee Economic Alliance page. It's also the Think Oconee, Destination Oconee initiative. But we are getting lots of engagement through our Facebook and other social media avenues. We utilize our website for, on the Oconee Economic Alliance side, next slide, for lots of information relative to blog posts, press releases. We do our best to make sure anything that's going on in the community, whether it be one of our industries being recognized for something or a ribbon cutting or an expansion, to make sure that information is getting out to the community at large. If you remember, we have the Oconee Ally program, and that helps to spread that news. And that gets back to that first slide of one of our goals and mission statements is to share the good news and share that message. So from a marketing standpoint, we continue to work heavily on getting that word out and have received very positive feedback. Next, we're going to talk about Destination Oconee and the different initiatives that have been involved there. I think you've heard those from us before, from the standpoint of all the work that we've done within the municipalities, helping them with their downtown development initiatives and those types of things. There's a list, but more importantly, Destination Oconee has really birthed the Think Oconee initiative, which started out as a buy local campaign, but it's become way more than that. The Destination Oconee video that I want to show tonight really gives a feel for the quality of life factors that Oconee County has. And we have found in economic development, again, you can speak to what product you have available, but when people want to know what kind of quality of life is there, this video kind of speaks for itself. So just a quick 2 minutes.
Dirty skipping stones only. You don't know where to go or where to run. Come find me in a mountain stream to cool your bones and bring your peace if your burden soul can't find the morning light. I'm here tonight. Oh, I'm here tonight. Oh, come. Come find me. Come find me, or set your mind at ease. Your aching soul's gonna make it home. There's one thing I believe. Come on back home, it's gonna be alright. These open arms are welcome sight. Your burden soul can find the morning light. I'm here tonight.
As I said, I think that video kind of speaks for itself from the standpoint of what the quality of life factors are here in Oconee County. I'm not going to spend a lot more time talking about the video so much, just because I know we're short on time. But in addition to the Think Oconee video, we have created a Think Oconee website, which kind of mirrors the video. But one point I want to make on that website, that was created in-house. We didn't take that out, we did not bid that out, so our staff, the help of these two ladies and a part-time intern, have created that, as well as doing all the work on the video. So with all of the things, and you can just go to the last page, Katie. With everything I have shared with you tonight, it's a huge effort on the part of our team to make sure economic development is alive and well in Oconee County. As I said, we're not a traditional office. We've made great strides in being a leader in the upstate. We get asked many times from our Upstate Alliance friends, our Department of Commerce friends, to participate and be an example for them because of the different things we are doing here. And because the economic development world is changing, the competitiveness is greater. And from that standpoint, we need to stand out and be different. And I feel like we do that very well. What has happened with the exodus of Richard Blackwell, all of this is being covered currently by a staff of 3.5. We have been fortunate from the standpoint of having an intern, a part-time intern through the school years, to be there to help with various projects and such. But based on the workload from the standpoint of taking on the business recruitment, the product development, and just being able to keep the Destination Oconee alive and well, keep the marketing going, and being able to provide all the research data that's needed to attract these businesses, it is time for us to, and my request to this committee is to convert the part-time intern position to a full-time permanent position. This permanent position would be titled Graphic Design Special Projects. This person would take care of a lot of the things you've seen from a graphic design, whether it be ad layout, presentation materials, website updates, project visit materials. There's a lot of work that goes into a project visit that's very hard to see from the surface. All of the social media that we've talked about, that in a lot of communities becomes a full-time job. That would be incorporated into this special projects position, along with municipality support, special projects. Mr. Chapman showed you that ag piece that was done. That was done by our staff. Again, some of those projects that we've been able to do prior to being down to 3.5 staff members. So looking at a full-time position that would relieve some of the pressure from what I have taken on from an executive director's position, the relationship development piece of that alone is very necessary and very time-consuming, and being able to spread out some of those other responsibilities within the team of research specialists and our communications and public relations. So the graphic design special projects position, we would look at a salary grade of 115 within the county salary grades, and there's a range there from 32,966 to 40,758. But that's the range of that position. We're currently putting together, with the help of HR, a job description that would outline this position in detail with all of the qualifications necessary. So I ask that you consider that from this committee and then present to full council.
Thank you, Ms. Hartman.
Sorry to have rushed through
Yeah,
that,
no,
but I wanted
know.
to get through the
There's a
presentation.
lot to get through in a few minutes. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for picking up the baton and running with it. And thank you to the remaining staff members for your hard work. And I know the workload's been spread over fewer people, so that's always tough. Thank you all for sticking in there with us as we go through this transition. Does the committee have any questions about the presentation or about this request?
No, again, I echo what Mr. Kane's stating on that, and I would agree with your request on there, because it is a lot easier to retain the business that we have, and that's one specialty that I see that y'all are continuing to move forward with and keep that on. So I would make that motion as stated.
What motion is that?
What
That
she,
you recommend that
the
we
graphic
hire,
design position that she
bring
was
it up to the
proposing.
council?
Mhm.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions about the presentation? Thank you, Ms. Hartman.
Thank you.
All right. Any unfinished business? Any new business? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.